Okay. We're live, I think. Yeah,
Yay!
we're live. All right. Hey,
Hey,
hey, we're live.
our little live dance.
So, yeah, we have to dance always. Um, hey guys, I'm Jillian Walker, and I'm here with Sally Mercedes, um, the creator of the Unmuted Expression event. And I just want to do a quick intro for Sally so you guys know how awesome she is, since I already know, but you guys need to know. So, Sally is a coach, a writer, and a singer. She helps people express themselves fully and authentically, reconnect with their voice, and share their stories. She also, oh, that's it. That's all we're sharing now. I mean, she's way more than that, but we don't have enough time to even go into all of the facets and layers of Sally Mercedes. So that's what we're focusing on, because we really want to talk mostly about unmuted expression and what that is and what that means. So Sally, I'll let you, take us there.
Sure. Well, hi everyone, and thank you, Jillian, for having me here. This is awesome. I love anytime that I get to talk to Jillian is great. So really, now we're just recording it. That's all that's happening.
Yeah, pretty much. We're just putting it on YouTube so other people can witness it. But
it's so much fun. So yeah, unmuted expression. So for a long time now, I think this has kind of been bubbling up, and this has sort of been taking shape without me realizing that that's what was happening. A little bit more about my background. I've worked in digital marketing and branding for a long time now. Since it became...
That's how we met.
It was great, and it's brought a lot of great people into my life. And I think that really what I've always been drawn to is like authenticity and connection and expression, and just like whatever that means for either the company that I was working with or the people that I was coaching or whatever. And really a few months ago, I guess, I sort of decided that that authentic expression was really like at the core of everything that I do. As a person, and then like with what I teach and with what I'm drawn to, and it's just like all around me all the time. I can't help but like have that surrounding me. And so what happened was that I kind of decided, okay, well, now I'm going to be much more intentional with this. I mean, before, when I was doing branding and digital marketing as a coach, it was about building an authentic brand. But now it's kind of be broader, and like just your expression in every area of your life, and what that means for you, and how individual it can get, and letting go of what comes up around that, because your stuff will come up when you decide, make a decision to be real, like you're going to be authentic from now on. Your stuff comes up, and like leading people through that and helping people through that is part of it too. So that's kind of like a little intro.
Okay. I want to hear you talk more about, because we talk about this a lot. So when stuff comes up, I guess, what does that mean, or why does that happen, or can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So in terms of why that happens, I mean, there are like biological reasons, like your subconscious drives most of what you do every day, and your subconscious was created when you were born. From 0 to 7 is when your subconscious really took form, and so you're going to go back to that anytime that stuff starts to come up. If you believe, I mean, it doesn't matter if you believe in it or not, but things like your mother's health while you were in utero, like things like that kind of affect you. And in your brain, fear and desire, pleasure live in the same space. So sometimes your signals get crossed, and you're like, I'm terrified of this thing that I really want to do.
Is that the amygdala?
Yeah. So it lives in the same place, and then
so proud of myself that I knew that. Thank you. I didn't realize that fear and desire And what else? Fear, desire, and
pleasure. I mean, it's all kind of like
pleasure.
the same
It's
thing.
all there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think like somebody called it the pleasure center, and so was talking about how like by virtue of it being the pleasure center, then it's also like your pain center. Take that, like take that if you want. If that serves you, take that.
That's deep.
So that's like kind of why it comes up. And then as far as kind of dealing with that and like how that might show up, I mean, that shows up differently for everyone, and how you choose to move through it is a very like individual choice and will vary by modalities that you try and like coaches that you try, and like what works for them might not work for you, and that, you know, whatever. I have this whole thing I used to do actually when I was a branding and digital marketing coach. I mean, I guess I still technically am, but when that was the focus, what I had was this process that I called dating your fears, where you would like get to know your fear and like take them out on a date and like whatever. I've got an ice cream truck passing by my house right now.
Amazing.
It's very distracting. So yeah, so we got that. Now I kind of embrace dancing through your fear because dance is very important to me. But it's all just about like getting to know what's coming up, taking that as deep as you need to go, really kind of exploring it, allowing yourself to feel the negative emotion is important. Like acknowledge that it's there, don't hide it, don't try to ignore it, because it will give it more power and it's not going to let you go. Your fear, your subconscious, it wants you to keep playing safe. It wants you to stay small and silent and like stay in your corner. I keep saying it as like stay in your corner, small and silent, and that's it. You're good.
Because it's more familiar to us. Like
yeah, we know how to do that. We know how to do whatever thing we went to school for. That's easy. Right. You know, it's like breaking out of that and going for your desires and like really reaching into, well, is that still real for me? Like that's when stuff starts to come up. And you know, that might look like, I recommend reading The Big Leap by, do you remember his name?
Gay Hendricks. Great book. Yeah.
I recommend reading The Big Leap to help you through some of that. But just like some of the ways that fear has come up in my life, definitely making myself sick. I mean, obviously not consciously. But like illness coming up, or I actually this just happened to me and I thought, oh, the big leap, my upper limit problem. I just got an unexpected bill from my insurance, that something that I thought was covered in my insurance was not. So now I owe them money. And I'm like, okay, I see you. I understand what's happening now. Like, this is my subconscious trying to keep me over here, and me being like, nope, I'm not having it. I'm going to keep going over there.
Right.
That was a little bit of a tangent, but yeah.
No. It's very related. I mean, essentially, you know, another way of saying upper limit problem is saying self-sabotage. Like the ways in which we keep ourselves at the level that we're used to in our lives.
Yeah.
Because when you do break through, like let's say it's you finally meet a guy or a girl that, you know, could really be something real, you know, that you may subconsciously or maybe even consciously sabotage that relationship. Like things like that. That's upper limit. Yeah, same thing. So it's not a tangent at all, because it's really related to like giving yourself permission, right?
Yeah, and just really getting to the core of, well, who am I really, and who do I want to be? Is that still who I am, like that person that I was a year ago, a month ago? It's really about getting clear on that. And if the answer is like, no, I'm not that person anymore, then like, who the heck am I? And what does that mean? And what do I do? All these huge questions. But really, like at their core, it's just about who you really just want to be, what you really want to do, what you want to experience, how you want to live your life. Like, they're big and they're scary and they're kind of crazy, but I mean, they need to be asked. You're living your life anyway. You might as well be living the life that's closer to what you want than the one that's like somebody told you were supposed to be living.
Right.
You're still alive, so it's up to you.
Yeah. So how did you get from the core of your work being you know, digital marketing, branding stuff, social media stuff, to planning, you know, this unmuted expression event and coaching people, particularly women, around, you know, authentic expression? Like, what was that journey for you? And, you know, did you have upper limit stuff come up? I mean, what has that been like?
Yeah, I'm definitely still on the journey. It started even before I was really officially a consultant, when I was just working a normal job, and I was miserable. And I had to, and it was this really interesting moment, and this is, I might cry, I don't know. I might cry during this thing, guys. It's unclear. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's fine. That my goal as an interviewer is to try and make you cry. So, just
very
so you
Oprah
know.
of you.
Yeah, and you have the big jar, mason jar. You can just put your tears in it. It's fine.
So I was working a job. It was a fine job. On paper, I should have been completely happy. I was good at it. It was very easy for me. It was like easy money. I showed up at work. I worked a few hours and, like, you know, screwed around the rest of the time, made friends with people at work, and that was it. That's all that I did. You know, I was dating at the time. It was fine. Nothing spectacular, but nothing wrong. But, like, something was wrong. Like, I knew that something was wrong, that things were not okay, because I was beyond miserable. And so first I, like, went through all this guilt, like, I have this great life, I'm so fortunate, I'm so lucky, I have everything that I want, I live in New York, one of the best cities in the world, like, I've made it here, so I can make it anywhere, so, like, all of this stuff, and I'm miserable. I'm, like, drinking at work. Like, that shit is not cute.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I booked a flight to Paris.
I love how you just, like, decided.
I mean, like, I had wanted to live in Paris for a long time, so it's not like it came out of nowhere. It's not like I just, like, decided, like, I'm going to pick a random place. But kind of, yeah.
No,
I mean,
it takes courage to just, I'm going to book a flight. Yeah.
I like booked a flight. I told my sisters, I would texted them at like 2 a.m. or something, and I was like, so I'm thinking of booking a flight to Paris. What do you think? And they were both like, yeah. I was like, okay, I'm doing it. So I quit my job a few months later. I moved to Paris, and I just kind of started really asking myself those questions, like, well, who am I now? I'm not that person, obviously, because I was not happy. It was my wake-up call in a lot of ways, and I think that that's really, like, the first step is, like, if you're getting a wake-up call in whatever form that takes, if you got sick, you got into an accident, you broke up with somebody, you were fired, you decided to up and quit, like, whatever, getting that wake-up call and then going from there, instead of reverting back to whatever you think is safe, instead of like looking for a new traditional job, I just allowed myself to stay in that space and, like, start to explore that. So then that's really, like, where that began. And I didn't think that it would take me here. I was just like, okay, well, now I'll be a consultant. I'm going to, you know, work with clients directly. I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing, but in a different way. A lot came up for me constantly. Every time that I decided that I was going to start doing something new, then, like, stuff would come up. I would get really scared, or I would really doubt myself, or I would get really sick. I'd be broke. I'd, like, suddenly have no money. There was a woman who I was supposed to move into her apartment in Paris. I, like, found it. It was lovely. I gave her the money for it. And then I never moved into that place. Like, she ended up having to stay later. And then she just kind of, like, was like, okay, so then you can move in next month. And I was like, okay, great, that's fine. I have a place to stay, so that's okay. But she just kept, like, not knowing when it was going to happen. So I never got that money back. Like, she just, like, fell off the face of the earth after that. And I was broke. That was my money to, like, live in Paris. And suddenly I didn't have it. Thank God for great friends who believed in me and were like, you'll make it eventually, and so here's some money. But, like, all of these things and all these times where in the past I might have just given up and just would have been like, well, I'm going to move back to New York then because I ran out of money, or, like, whatever. I just kept moving through it. That's really when I started to, like, listen to myself again. And, like, things still felt like I was on the right path, so I just kept on going. And
so you live very largely by your intuition.
I do now, yes.
Yeah, I feel like that's still, I do feel that it's changing, but I feel like that's still very um, sort of considered, odd to do that.
Yeah.
Um, is that a part of what you help people with to really tune into their
Yeah.
intuition?
And it takes different forms. So because I'm a writer and because writing is really like I journal a lot and like that's how I ground myself and that's how I really like talk to myself. So I do that a lot with clients. I do like free writing exercises and things like that. Movement, getting into your body. That's why I love dance and just like tell people take as many dance breaks as possible. Like that's how you're gonna move through any emotion. Almost any emotion that I have that's like bigger than I can contain, I just start dancing. And I'll like be dancing and sobbing. I did that earlier today. um, so like whatever it is.
Hmm.
These kinds of things that just really let you explore what you're like trying to say to yourself. Like what is, and just like listen to it. Whatever that is for you. I have a client who I worked with last year who's actually now going to be a speaker at the event, Kim
Oh,
Conti. When I
great.
worked with Kim last year, she was like, I hate free writing. I hope it's okay. I did not ask her permission to talk about her, but she was like, I hate free writing. Like, but like she still did it, like, and it still worked for her. So and I kept telling her like, well, when you go home, it could be something else. You could be cooking. Cooking, baking for me is very like, because it's just me and the recipe, and that's it. Me and pleasure and like whatever
Mm-hmm.
comes up. So it's just all about like I started to really ask myself when I was in Paris especially, and then when I moved back and I was sort of floating around. I was like homeless technically. I didn't have a home. So just kind of floating around, and I just kept asking myself like, and checking in and like asking like, okay, is this the right thing? Is this not the right thing? And the more that you do that, the stronger it gets. It becomes much easier to listen to your voice.
Right. So it's
And
almost like
there
a, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was gonna say that there are times when like I still get disconnected from that. I still like move away from that, and then I have to like find it again. And I usually feel it because like it becomes quieter. And so when I'll start journaling, then suddenly I'm like not hearing a voice, and I'm like, what's going on? So yeah, so that's that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think because I'm on the same journey doing the same thing, and so I think that intuition is like a muscle that gets stronger the more you use it. And I think that in the past, when I first started, trying to follow my intuition, I would follow it like one time and then not follow it for like, a year and try and be like, well, it's not really there, or I can't really trust it. Not realizing that it was
Yeah.
something that I actually needed to spend time with more and more in
Mhm.
order for me to even know what it was.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that's a huge part of authentic expression, which is the core of your work, is just
Mhm.
really listening to your intuition. And as women, that's something that it's just a gift that we have. I mean, men have it too. They do. They have intuition, but women, we use the language of it without realizing it. Like,
Mhm.
I just have, I have a feeling little Timmy should not go to school today. I just feel
Yeah.
like and still you feel like you don't know your intuition when you really do. It's just a matter of like acknowledging it. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
um,
Um, and that reminds me, actually, I was talking to a coach. I was being coached, essentially, a couple of months ago, and we were talking about like the times that I've made big decisions in my life, and the times that I've made big moves, like going to Paris, or like when I decided to come back, or like whatever it is. And she was the one who reflected to me. She was like, so what it sounds like to me is that anytime that you actually trust your intuition, you're rewarded and you love the experience.
ah,
But you think that you don't trust it. So you just keep overthinking it. And like, that's how you keep disconnecting from it. Because you keep being like, well, I can't trust that. Like, because I ended up broke eventually or whatever. Like I ended up broke in Paris. So like, I shouldn't trust that. And it really like, it helped so much that like one like 15-minute conversation or whatever. to like remind myself of that. Like, actually, that's a good point. Like, it was an incredible experience. Yeah, I was broke in Paris. That kind of sucked. But like, man, what a better place to be broke than in Paris? You can just like, roam the streets. Like, food is cheap. Like, everyone loves each other. Everyone's like broke there, so like they don't care.
Yeah, I mean, it's way better to be broke there than in New York, I think.
It's true. It is true.
Hey, broken Paris. No, but you're right. I mean, I totally empathize with that, or agree with that too, that, you know, we think too much. Mm-hmm. We overthink. And you know, I'm still figuring out what the core of my work is, but my whole journey right now is about how to integrate the brain, the body, and the soul, and, you know, not demonize the mind, you know, so that we're trying not to think all the time, because I think often, you know, that just looks like this, or like nothing's happening, and that's not. I mean, we need our minds to do our work, and that's important. But there is, I think, a culture of talking ourselves out of what we know is true. You know, even in middle school, or not middle school, but I forget when you take the ACT, SAT, whatever. In 11th grade, high school sometime. You know, when you were told, like, don't change your answer. Right. You know, I was always that kid that if I had time, I would go back and change it. And most of the time, I was right the first time, you know. But, you know, I mean, I kind of wish, I don't really want to take the ACT, SAT again, but now I wonder what I would do, because I feel like I wouldn't even go back. If I had extra time, right. I wouldn't, you know.
Like, trust, let it go.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's talk about the event.
All right.
The unmuted expression, the event. So how did it come about? And, you know, what is it?
It's such a fun story to tell. I've now had to tell it a couple of times over the last few days. I was at an event with Jillian, and and lately, so I used to be an event planner. I've been a lot of things. I used to be an event planner, but I hadn't planned an event in a long time. It just kind of like the organization that I used to work with that had events a lot doesn't really have them anymore. So it just kind of fell away. It wasn't anything conscious. And I had been really feeling lately, like in the last couple of months at least, like I need to like plan an event. Like I really miss event planning. They're fun. And so I'm at this event, and I had just come back from a conference, another like coaching event type of thing. And I had thought it then too. And so then I turned to Jillian, and I'm like, I need to plan an event. I'm going to plan an event soon, or something like that. And Jillian was like, okay, what's it going to be? And I was like, it's going to be women that I love sharing their wisdom. That's it. That's the event. Jillian was like, okay, great. So I like let myself think about it on the ride home. I was like letting myself visualize it, and this is all like kind of become part of my process, not necessarily what I teach others, but it is mine. Letting myself visualize it. What does it look like? What happens? What do I want to feel? What do I want to experience? And once I did that, it felt so good that I was like, this has to happen. And a week later, essentially, I had like 2 people who could confirm the speakers, and I had started talking to venues, and so then a couple of weeks after that, then I booked a venue, and it was real, it was happening. So that's how it came about. Just like total like trusting my gut, like at the time had no idea even who I would ask or like what would happen. That was it. It's a little bit more defined now, but not much more, honestly. It's at the core, it is women speaking about their experiences with their own expression, with their creativity, because that's a really big part of authentic expression, and like what comes up with for them, and times in their life when they've kind of been felt like silenced or stifled or whatever, not totally authentically expressed, and their journey to feeling authentically expressed. So it'll be set up that way, but really it's an experience. Like, I call it an event, but it's really an experience. Every woman who attends, I want to just really feel into what is landing for them, how it's landing, like what triggers them, what resonates with them. There will be like free writing and like exercises and things like that. It's kind of not a free-for-all, but like I'm letting every speaker just do what she feels she needs to do at the event. So it's not this like, we're going to talk about our lives and why we're so awesome and why you should like work with us or like whatever, what we have to teach you. Like, we're all here learning from each other. I want the women who attend to share, you know, obviously if they're comfortable, they don't have to, like share things that come up for them during the exercises and all that kind of stuff. Like, I really want it to be this space of women totally letting everything go, letting anything come up, and sharing that with each other and just holding that space. Like, I'm just creating this container to hold space for women to express themselves and to come away with feeling like they can do that. Like, that's okay. They can give themselves permission to do that, at least for this one day, preferably for the rest of your life, but like, you know, baby steps. And that's really what it is. And so there'll be dancing because I love music and dancing. There'll be free writing probably. There might be other kind of movement things. I don't know. There might be, you might be able to talk to a partner. Like, who knows? This is all still kind of like, I'm really like feeling into this and letting all the speakers kind of really feel into it. So that's what it is. And I'm really excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be like deep and like work and whatever, you know, that kind of stuff. But it's going to be fun. And I really like, it's unmuted expression, discover and celebrate your authenticity. Like, I want it to feel like a celebration. Like, I want you to feel like no more keeping myself silent and small, like no more living my life compartmentalized, no more like being this way with that person and this way with that person, and at work I'm this person and like whatever. No more of that, and just like figure out who you are or who you want to be if you're not that yet. And start like making baby steps to get there, and like what that means for you right now, and start like putting all that stuff together and being one whole person and being happy. Exactly. And dancing a lot and maybe
I love it. It just makes me want to open my chest. Like,
exactly. It's just like
saying.
Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly it.
And I'm really glad that you brought up the subtitle, which is Discover and Celebrate Your Authenticity, because I think that me, as somebody who, you know, I consider myself a seeker, I'm constantly like on the quest for a better me, and you know, for basically the undoing of all the things that are not me, and the revealing of my soul and all of that. But what I forget often is that it should be, or can be, a celebration. That it's not always about like the work of like getting through the muck, you know, or you know, this I think even as a woman, I still feel sometimes like I take a very masculine approach to self-improvement, you know, that like, you know, it's about like having the answer and then doing the next thing, and like I'm like, okay, great, I'm better, but I want to be better than that. So I'm glad you brought up that it's also a celebration. It's like we can celebrate who we are today, right now, because you're already exactly what you should be. Like, you're perfect and wonderful and amazing. And yeah, I mean, I think that like I do feel, you know, I've learned to be very loving and patient with myself, but that's still something that I forget is like, oh, I can celebrate too. you know.
You can have a dance party.
Yeah.
You can do
Yeah.
that. You can do whatever it is. And I'm feeling like kind of called to say also like it doesn't have to be scary. Um, and so like I say like, you know, we're gonna do the work or whatever. And I think that sometimes that like scares people because it's like, I don't want to cry in public or like whatever. Um, even though that's fine. People, I do it all the time. But I've really like been thinking a lot lately, and this maybe I'll talk about this at the event. I'm not sure, but I've really been thinking a lot about like the lessons that I've learned from pleasure. Like when something was just so good that I was like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Like I think that sometimes like we get so caught up in like it's supposed to be work and I'm supposed to be afraid and like I'm supposed to like this is the obstacle that I'm supposed to be you know overcoming or whatever that we forget like sometimes when things feel good that's a good sign. Like that's also a good sign as long as you're still like talking to yourself and you still feel like oh no this is still aligned like go for that. I actually when I hadn't sung in public in 10 years maybe a little bit over 10 years a few years ago like 3 years ago now and it felt so good to sing again. And that really was the thing that made me remember, like, hey, this is what like, I do this. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. It's like, I don't get scared when I perform, like me personally. Like, as soon as I'm on that stage, the nerves go away, and I'm like, I'm here. I'm just enjoying this. I'm going to sing because singing is fun, and it makes me happy. And like maybe it'll sound good, maybe it won't. I don't know. And sure, I'll beat myself up afterwards, and like I'll go through like a little shame spiral maybe, or like whatever if things don't go exactly how I envisioned it. But when I'm on stage, I am happy. So you can follow that. Like if the expression of your authenticity right now is like I'm just gonna follow the pleasure, freaking follow the pleasure. Don't be scared of that either. Like just go for it.
Yeah, so nerd moment. I'm going to bring up something a little nerdy, but Joseph Campbell is, you know, the sayer, the first person we know at least to say follow your bliss. You know, funnily enough, Joseph Campbell is also who we know as like the creator of the hero's journey, or you know, he wrote this whole book about Hero with a Thousand Faces, and we all know like what that journey looks like. And you're supposed to have obstacles and like, you know, these things to overcome. And I don't know why when you said, well, earlier when we were still talking about like it can be pleasurable. It just made me think of the hero's journey because I feel like so much of the time I forget that like pleasure can also be a part of my journey as like the hero of my life. You know, and then also follow your bliss, like that's totally pleasurable. You know, blissful things like are full of pleasure and like brightness and sunshine and you know, but I think that you know it's interesting because for some people, I think particularly for women, pleasure is scary, or it can be.
Yeah.
We think that pleasure, our culture, I think, teaches us that pleasure is frivolous, that it's, you know, this secondary thing that maybe you do on a Sunday when, after you finish, like, cleaning or whatever. You have, like, one pleasurable activity per week. And if you do anything more than that, then, like, you feel guilty about it, you know? Because that's what we're taught. We're supposed to work and then like maybe have something pleasurable, and it's like a piece of chocolate. Like that's okay, that's fine. But like you know, taking off for a month to go like travel through the Caribbean would be considered, I think, by most people to be you know ridiculous or whatever. So. I don't know, I just felt like I needed to bring that up just for the women that are watching to think about and know that like pleasure actually can be a form of intelligence. Like if you follow it, you will often find way more than you thought you would about yourself, and about, you know, what your purpose is, I think.
I'm so glad that you brought that up because that's actually at the core of so much of what I do with, you know, around authentic expression and unmuted expression. Um, you know, this kind of started, one of the ways that this started, like I said, it's all these weird things that have kind of been building on top of each other. One of the things that I do with clients that I was even doing before is a schedule makeover, right? So like we revamp your schedule. So I'm trying to fill it with as much joy as possible. I'm like, tell me all the things that nourish you, the things that energize you, the things that make you feel like yourself, that make you happy, and they can be little things. My job as your coach, is like the person who's like leading you through this, is trying to fill your schedule with as much of that as possible. I'm not going to take away all the things that you have to do, although I might question, like, do you really have to do that? Like, do you have to? I don't know, whatever. Like, watch TV for an hour. Like, is that really feeding you? Is that part of your expression? And then you're like,
I remember when we did mine. Yeah.
Well, and it's great too. No, go ahead.
I was convinced that like there wasn't going to be enough time in the week to do everything. I was like, there's no way she's going to be able to fit everything in. And I had like so much time left over. And you were like, I mean, you can do more things. Like, you know, are you sure you don't want to do anything else? And I was like, how did she do that? Like,
yeah, it's like you have to get real with like, you know.
But how do people usually respond to that? Are they like excited about putting more joyful things in their life, or you know?
It depends. I mean, I think that people get so preoccupied with like, well, I'm supposed to do this. It's supposed to be hard. I'm supposed to whatever. I don't even remember anymore. Like it's just like so many of them, and a lot of them sound the same, but it's like it just really comes down to, well, you don't have to. But if you know that it energizes you, it feeds you, like you're on fire afterwards, like why don't you try it? Just try it. Like try it for a little bit. You don't have to do it. I don't do the schedule makeover and then sit beside you and make sure that you follow it for 7 days. You do whatever you want. Once the schedule's done, it's up to you. But like probably you're going to find that you like actually like that. I mean, that's really like, it came from the fact that I found that I needed that. I needed a whole new, like, I mean, I needed the life makeover, but like what I discovered right before I started being a consultant or working as a consultant with clients, with like people, not like companies, was like how you spend your time and your money is how you spend your life, period. That is it. How you spend your time and your money is how you spend your life. So are you going to spend your time and your money on things that make you happy, on things that excite you, on things that energize you? Or are you going to spend it on complaining for an hour over really expensive cocktails after work? Like, yeah, probably the latter is like the thing that we're used to, and especially in New York and whatever, but you don't have to do that. You can actually spend that time baking cupcakes because you feel moved to or whatever. And like that awareness for me changed my life. And so that's why it's like ever since then it's been everything that I do, because it's like every woman needs to like start doing this. I mean, every man too, but like I've worked mostly with women. So it's like every woman needs to do this. Like
we
need to try this. We love women.
We love women. I mean, we love men, but we love women. So those things like baking cupcakes, for instance, is that act essentially like unmuting your expression and getting closer to your authentic self? Would you consider something so small as like painting your nails orange? Like, you know, I just looked up and saw my orange nail polish and thought about it. So, but you know what? I think what you just said is that those little acts, so baking the cupcakes or the cookies or whatever, instead of having the drinks, and then afterwards, you know, eating the cookie and then painting your nails, is what then made up your evening. And then therefore, like, days and days and days and days of that then have made up your life.
Yes.
And you have actually spent your life living authentically and getting out of the way. I like point to my throat because I'm always like trying to open this up more and more. But I mean, I know you know what I'm talking about. As a singer, we're both singers, so we, you know, are always like, for me it's always about here, and like, well, not always. Sometimes it's about like getting into the ground, but we don't have time to. You have to come to the event. You have to come to Unmuted Expression, the event, to hear about that. Because I'm one of the speakers, so you come and you hear about that, the other stuff. But no, I think that that's so key, and we all know that like these small things make up our life, and yet I think we let guilt or fear or shame get in the way really, really often. Like, especially I think shame is a big one for women. And, you know, speaking for myself as a woman of color, I think that there's like a lot of shame to mire through in our community. You know, I mean, not that other women don't have that, but it's one of the first things I ran up against when I decided that I wanted to try to live my most authentic life, and to basically live with my soul bared as much as possible. You know, there was a lot of shame, and there was also just a lot of guilt, like, who am I to do this? And well, you know, so-and-so never got the chance, so I shouldn't. Somehow that made sense to me. I was like,
it made sense to me too. So
like my ancestors didn't do it, so I can't do it. Even though like they died so that I could do it. You know, it's just, but it made sense you know, and it still comes up for me. Like, I'm still working through that stuff. But yeah, I went off on a tangent, so
it was a good tangent. I liked it. Yeah, I think it's. So I say this to people, my clients, but also like my sisters. One of my sisters is obsessed with this. I said one day, like, because part of my process is going through it, your ideal day. Like, that's so a part of like what I go, like, I do that often. For a while I was doing it every single day. And I go through it with clients. And so I was taking my sisters through this like goal setting process that I have. That maybe I'll like turn into a product or something, or like a program at some point, because it's good. It's like good stuff.
Hey, okay.
And so we went through the ideal day, and I was like, you know, really, like, your life, like your greatest life, is made up of good days. So like trying to make every day your ideal day should just be your number one goal. Like, what can I do to make this day better? Like, what can I do to be more authentically expressed today? What can I do to fully express myself in this moment? And this is something that, even though like I've been, you know, going through this now, I mean, for all of my life, but certainly in a concentrated form over the last 2 years, just like 2 or 3 days ago, like, light bulb moment where I felt, well, like, I finally realized that in the times when I feel disconnected, it's not necessarily about like, is this self-care or is this self-sabotage, which is like usually where I go, like, do I want to take a nap now to self-sabotage? Is it because it's self-sabotage, or is it because like I need to take care of my body? And instead of that, now I'm like, okay, would a nap be like part of my expression right now? Is that how I'm feeling right now? Is that true to me right now? Or would I feel more expressed if I danced, or if I worked on my business, or if I called a friend or whatever? And so just like coming up with these little things, these little moments. It's like this moment by moment decision of like, okay, right now this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to show up as myself.
Okay.
And
I hope you guys.
That's what it comes down to.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just want to make sure people are writing this down, because this is free coaching. I mean, I have my notebook, so I'm definitely like gonna rewatch this and take notes. I love that because I really have been struggling with, is this self-care or is this self-sabotage? And, you know, basically stressing myself out over whether or not, you know, what I think I want to do is really what I should do. Is that the best thing? So I think from moment to moment and asking myself the question that you asked, which is, you know, what feels like the most authentic thing to do right now, is really helpful. So thank you for that. It's really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it really, that's what it comes down to. And it's, yeah, like we all lose our way. Like, we just have to try to get back to it. Like, it's okay. And then the more that you do it, the easier it is to get back to it. Like, you know, I might be disconnected totally from myself for like, I don't know, a day or two or whatever. And then I'm like, oh, I have to wake up. Like, I need to get back into this. Like, you know, that's why I've been feeling this way, or like whatever, this has been happening or whatever. And it's easier now because it's like become a practice. Like it's a thing that you have to practice. Like anything else, like most other creative outlets, I guess.
Yeah.
You just have to like really check in with yourself and constantly talk to yourself. And that sounds kind of like exhausting, but it isn't. It's really fun. Like it can be a lot of fun. And you know, and as long as you find those things like the baking or the, you know, cooking or whatever it is for you, the things that really make you feel like, okay, this is energizing me. Like one of my commitments in doing the schedule makeovers, for example, is like helping people become like time benders, because that's how I feel. I feel like I have like all the time in the world. Whenever I'm like actually living my ideal day, it's like I'll sit down to do something. I'll put it in my calendar for 2 hours. I'll be done in 15 minutes. Like done. Like totally everything is done. And I feel like I have so many of those moments, and it's because of that, because I'm like constantly like doing these things that fuel me and that energize me and that I'm good at and that I love to do, and let that be. Like I don't judge it anymore. You know, if it is for you watching TV, like I said that earlier is like a thing that might not be it, but like if for you watching TV for an hour helps you, like, yeah, like I feel so good right now. Like for me, like Big Brother, for example, or like So You Think You Can Dance. Oh my God. I spend an hour like watching So You Think You Can Dance. I feel so like I'm on top of the world. I'm not even a dancer. And I'm like, yeah, like that's right.
I know.
So like things like that, it's like just don't judge it. Like it's okay. Like reality TV, it's fine. If that's a thing that actually is your expression, own it. It's all right. It's okay. I used to say, I started dating this guy who then became my best friend, and in our first date, he said something about like a guilty pleasure, and I was like, oh, I don't believe in guilty pleasures. If it's a pleasure, what is there to feel guilty about? And he was like, what are you talking about? Even then, and that was like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, even then I was like, but it feeds me. Like, why should I feel guilty about it? Like if this trashy novel, like for me, young adult fiction, read it all day, every day if I could. Like it makes me connect to myself in a purer way than reading something else sometimes. Like it all depends, right? It's like it depends on the day or like how I'm feeling, but like I'm like, oh, I just feel so open. I'm like, yeah, I'm a writer. I can do things like this. I can create a world like this, you know, whatever it is. Like I get lost in movies, like whatever.
So let me ask you this. What would you say to a woman who came to you and said, like, all of that sounds amazing, Sally, and I'm really excited, but I have never felt that way, or like I have no idea what that feeling even feels like. What would you say to her?
You've got some exploring to do, number one, but number two, is that real? Like, is that actually true? Because I find that often when people actually start thinking about it and they have to get real about it, it isn't true. What can happen is that you start to do something, you start to feel really excited about it, and then you shut it down. And then you're like, well, for whatever reason, it could be conscious or subconscious, it could be self-sabotage, it could be self-care, whatever the reason is, you shut it down. But like for that moment, that tiny moment, you had it, you knew it. You just have to find it again. And And that's fine. Like, just knowing that you had it at some point in time, which all of us had it at least when we were little. Like, who did you want to be before you were told that you couldn't be that? What did you want to experience? What did you want to do with your life? Whatever it is. Like, reconnect with that. Start there. Maybe that'll still resonate with you. Maybe it won't. You know, I like wanted to be a psychologist. I was a weird kid. I wanted to be a psychologist. I wanted to help people. I wanted to like teach them. I wanted to do research. I was a really weird kid.
You wanted to do research.
I wanted to do, yeah. I mean, I still like, when I was in college, I was like, yep, I'm going to be a psychology professor just so that I can do research. Like, at that point, I had abandoned the psychologist part of it, but I was like, what I want to do is like learn everything that I can about human relationships. Like, that was my jam. But like, whatever it is, like, you had it. At some point in your life, you had it. If somebody shut that down, like, all you need to do is start to explore it again. And exploring it with in a safe space, like with a coach, like me, or like somebody else. Like, that's really one of the best ways to do it, because then you get
or coming to the event.
Like coming to the event.
Yay!
Like, you need to have this space where it's like, okay, I'm going to play with this for a little bit. And, you know, a lot of the times, unfortunately, and I go through this with like my authentic expression, Authentically You, my private coaching program, like dealing with the relationships, because those start to shift too. And like making sure that you're surrounding yourself with people who lift you up and who support your authenticity even when that's changing, as opposed to like the people who are constantly like, that's not who you are. Like, why would you try to do that? Like, you're not a singer. Why are you singing? Or like whatever, which like they mean well. Everyone means well. We've all been there. They, you know, people want to protect you, whatever it is.
I think
like,
like a good way that I've heard it put is that, you know, they want to protect you, and also people that are in your life at that time, like they know you as a certain thing, and that's comfortable and familiar to them. So when all of a sudden, you know, you walk into the bank and you say, like, you're gonna go to yoga later, when usually you go to happy hour, you know, your work husband or your girlfriend at work is gonna be like, yoga, like, what the, you know, because you know, whatever it is. So yes, I totally agree, and I think that is a really good place to start for anyone, because we do all have that. I think going back, even if you think you have a really good idea of like your soul's purpose and everything, I still think like going back to when you were, you know, 5 or whatever, your first memory, which may have nothing to do with, you know, what you do for a living, but will tell you so much about your authentic expression, you know, who you are, who you really are in this world, versus what other people want you to be, what socialization has created, you know, all of that. So, this is amazing.
I love it. And like the sun is like now like right in my face, and I'm like, oh, I love you, sun. I like I'm obsessed with the sun. I have learned this about myself. I was not a nature person, but now I'm like, give me the sun. I love you. Every morning it like comes in through the window and on my couch, and I'm like, the sun is here. Oh, yay.
I have so much energy when there's sun, and then I can feel it in my body before I open my eyes. I know whether the sun is out or not. Because if it's not out, I don't want to get up. If it's out, I'm like, woo! So again, like, this is really good to just check in with yourself about things like that. Like, that kind of stuff matters, because then maybe you don't want to move to Seattle for that job. If you really like the sun, like, that's really going to affect your life, because every day that you have clouds, you're not going to be as happy. So anyway, I mean, God, we could go on and on forever and ever.
No. So good.
I want to wrap up by just first of all, you know, letting people know when the event is and where. I mean, obviously we'll put that, you know, on the page, also on the YouTube page, but just letting people know that, and then also like how they can find you and keep in touch with you, and people might, definitely want to work with you. So
Awesome
what's all that?
sauce. The event is on July 12th. It is a Saturday from 10 to 6. It is in Brooklyn at Spoke the Hub's Union Street space, which the address is will be in the link. You can find me at sallymercedes.com or at Sally Simply on Twitter, at Sally Simply on Instagram, Sally.Mercedes on Facebook, all of the things.
I don't think I'm following you on Instagram.
You gotta follow me on Instagram. It's fun. Although mostly all that I do is like, this is my workspace today, because I love workspaces. And I love the idea of being able to work in Central Park. So that's where I'm at. And all of those links are also like on my website. So if you go to sallymercedes.com, then like on the top it'll link to those. That's where to find me. And you can email me, sally@sallymercedes.com. Yeah, if you want to chat, if you feel called to talk through things that like come up for you or like whatever, and definitely go to the event. I mean, like, clear your calendar, go to this event. Like, you don't understand how important it is going to be for you. Like, if you feel called in any way, shape, or form, if there's like the tiniest voice in your head that's like, man, that sounds like fun. Man, that's really cool. I wish I could, but like, I wish I could, but I don't have time. I wish I could, but like, oh man, like I was planning on doing whatever thing that day. Maybe like listen to the voice that's like, but really, wouldn't this be fun? Because that's the voice you gotta listen to. Like, all that other stuff is just stuff.
Yeah.
Getting in your way. And like, yeah, there are legitimate reasons to not go and all that kind of thing. But like, if you're feeling a little voice that's like, then trust it. Go for it, because then that means that there's something there for you. Like, what it's, maybe something that I say, maybe something Jillian says, something else entirely. You might meet, I don't know, somebody to collaborate with. Like, who knows? Like, magic happens at things like this, I've learned. And so that's part of it too, like why I really wanted to have a live event. So much of my business is online and virtual, but I was like, that energy and that, like, I've been looking for a house cleaner. I don't know. I've been looking for a house cleaner. You clean houses? Like, whatever. Yeah. Magic happens. Yeah. So embrace the magic.
Does. Yeah. I agree. Yay. Thank you so much, Sally.
Yeah.
I do not yet have a name for this. I don't even know if this is a show or if we're just doing an interview right now. Like, I'm not sure. But thank you for being my first guest on my Not Sure show.
Yay!
I'm honored, and I wouldn't have asked anyone else first. So I guess we're done. We can say goodbye. I mean, don't like get off, but we'll stop the recording.
Don't go anywhere.
I have more things I want to say to you when we're done.
Oh God, I'm like loving. My last thing is gonna be like, I'm like loving that the sun is on my face right now, because lately it's been the thing that like gives me the sign that like I'm on the right track. That's like how I keep like, if the sun suddenly appears, that I'm like, okay. So now I'm kind of obsessed with the fact that this is happening right now. I did not plan this at all. But yeah.
I love it. I love it.
So thank you for having me. Yay.
Yeah. Yay. All right. See you guys at Unmuted Expression Live at the event. We'll see you there.
Peace out.
Bye.